And Jameson, you have had some big jobs. You were director level at Miles Stomping Ground, IBM,
Mm,
internationally for many years.
yeah.
And you are the current COO at Microsoft Switzerland.
Hmm.
Thank you
Yes.
so much for coming along, giving up your time, joining me on Decoding Calm in however many minutes. We say 15 minutes, but maybe we'll go a little bit longer. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
joining me.
No, exciting. Great
Let's
topic.
let's go right back to the start. Tell me a little bit about you as a youngster in terms of looking back, maybe now with hindsight. Do you think you were quite a chill child? Do you think you were always destined for big jobs with a lot of responsibility? Or do you think, well, let me stop there. What were you
It's a
like
very
as a child?
it's a very interesting question. And I was very humbled not long ago. So I have a daughter that is 12. But when she was 10, we were doing bedtime routine. And I'll never forget, I was just lying there with her before she went to bed. And she rolled over to me and said, Mommy, did you ever think you wouldn't be successful? And I thought, wow,
Oh,
that's a pretty big question for a 10-year-old.
yeah.
Um, and and my answer to her, my immediate answer to her was no. I never thought I wouldn't be successful. My next response to her was, but you have to define what success means to you.
Mm,
And I said, so did I think I would have big international jobs? Did I think I would be leading a team of people? Did I think I would have, you know, had the opportunity to work and live all over the world? I won't say no, I didn't, but I never kind of said that's where I want to go. I just kind of took the opportunities as they came up. But as a child, and so then that caused me to reflect because I was, again, I was pretty taken aback by my 10-year-old daughter asking me that question because clearly I was giving out some perception that I didn't want her to worry that, oh, I need to follow in my mom's footsteps in order to be successful. Hence the reason I said to her,
yeah.
you really need to find what success means for you. But as I look back to answer your question directly, as I look back, no, I was definitely not a calm child. I was the one, I would never leave my room in the morning without the bed being made, without everything in its place. My closet was, neat as a pin in terms of shirts hanging and skirts hanging from, left to right, color coordinated by length, short sleeve, long sleeve. I was highly, highly organized.
Right.
And that's how my thoughts were. My desk was always clean. My room was always clean. I was always very super structured. And so therefore, uh, and you've really given me pause to reflect. As I look back, it helped me to be organized, but it also at points I set myself up for uh, to be quite stressful and quite if things weren't exactly as it needed to be, I was less flexible. And that led to it, I remember very, very clearly in when I was an 11th grader, and that's in the US. So 11th grade, one more year's 12th grade, and then on to university. I almost had a nervous breakdown because I was also a student that I didn't accept B's. I only wanted A's, and I never got a C, but even a B at a lower, like in the 80s or 85s, it just wasn't acceptable. So I was always a very, very high achieving, conscientious student. But the pressure came from myself. Like I
Right.
look back and it wasn't, even my parents, we had talked about it, and my mom will tell you we never had to put pressure on me because I always was pressured in myself.
Right.
So where that comes from, I don't know. I was just always very, very driven, not only as a student, but I was also very, very driven as an athlete.
Right.
And so I I I was never a calm child. Never. I was always super, super driven. And like I said, 11th grade year, that came to a real head because I was also trying to decide where I was going to go to college. Was I going to get in the university that I wanted to go to? Was I going to have the right test scores? So, yeah, no, I was not a calm child.
It's one thing that jumped out at me in your answer there.
Hmm.
Um, you said you like everything in order, and whether it's your closet or whether it's anything. So that to me doesn't almost lend itself to a really senior position because I think
Hmm.
that the higher you go in any kind of business, things are going wrong in businesses all day, every day. And
Yeah.
and the more responsibility you take on, I guess from the outside, it looks like that's an even more broader scope, Anne, for
Hmm.
you to have. Let's say you said to me, in another lifetime, you said to me, yeah, I have all my stuff in order. I like to know exactly where I am. I love a routine. My closet's like this, da, da, da. I like to have complete control over everything. I go and do landscaping every day, and I've got my 10 clients, and it's perfect. And I go and landscape the gardens, and I come home. That would make more sense in my head than I'm the
Hmm.
COO of Microsoft Switzerland. Because the COO
Yeah.
of Microsoft Switzerland is, and this has happened. We've got this huge thing we got to do. We've got this problem that's happened over here. We've got to fight this fire over there. You know, it's like at the top of pushing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do those two things coexist? Your
Hmm.
desire to have everything in order whilst you're capable of holding, I won't say chaos, but you're capable of holding big problems, having to make big decisions, lots of things going wrong, lots of pressure, lots of moving parts,
Hmm. Hmm.
and something that you just can't control, right? There's must be so much in
Yeah.
your job, your working life that you just can't control. And there's curveballs coming at you left, right, and center. So how do those two things coexist?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, Personal life in order, home life in order,
Right.
work life. I've I've learned how to take chaos and structure it to a degree, and that's through people. At the end of the
Right.
day, you still need to be able to create organized chaos for people that you're working with. And it's a great question in terms of how does it coexist? And sometimes it doesn't coexist well. Sometimes I do get really stressed about things not being in order or feeling like it's out of control. Then I have to ground myself and say, okay, take a step back. What's the most important thing to get done in that day? Who can help you do it? What allies do you need? And so I think over time, and back to that 11th grade moment where I had someone come get me out of class to say, okay, I know this is really stressful, but let's work through it. And who do you need to help you? Who do you need to guide? And I do think, I've taken that with me almost everywhere I've gone. Take a step back. It's not the end of the world. Tomorrow is another day. But who do you need? What people do you need? What organizations do you need in order to help, make kind of bring that chaos under control.
Yeah.
So there are, but also, even in my role, there's got to be tactical things that are really in order, in line, must work a certain way. And then there are other things that are going to be chaotic. And then you learn how to kind of position that chaos and keep things moving forward.
Yeah.
So, they can coexist. Some days it's easier than others, but it can happen for sure. But I think it's learned. Like I have learned that things can't be always as structured and in order as you want them to be. So like I said, I have that in my home life. It doesn't always mean that I can replicate it in my work life.
Mm. And what are your go-to strategies when
Mm.
life gets really difficult?
Yeah.
And I'm going to touch on, in fact, just before I ask you your strategies, one thing, you and I just met for the first time last week, made a really great chat.
Yeah.
And you told me some quite personal stuff about losing your dad to suicide,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is a huge thing for anyone to go through.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I asked you before this if it was okay for me to mention that. And
Sure.
I think there can be a tendency for some people to look at the high flyers, the so-called high achievers, the C-suite, and think, well, they can't have had as rough a life as me. They can't have suffered like I have because I've had life's really dealt me some difficult things and it's prevented me from being super successful and happy and I'm really up against it here. And what I'm finding is, and Harriet spoke about, a sick parent when she was very young and losing a parent young.
Mm,
Um, when you scratch beneath the surface of this, you often see that some of the most senior people have dealt with huge trauma and
mm.
huge. So, can we touch on that as much or as little as you want to? How did that shape you as a person? How did that drive you as a person? How did that give you perspective in life? How did that
Yeah.
change? How did that change you, Anne, going through that horrendous thing? Did it make you more resilient? If so, how? Because it's a monumental thing. It's a huge thing for any family to go through.
Yeah.
So as much or as little as you'd like to speak on that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. And I love being able to talk about it actually. And I've always been one, I never shied away from it in
Right.
terms of just, yeah, it is probably the single hardest thing I've ever had to go through, right? Um, but it absolutely has shaped me. And I also will look back even before that, before the event, my dad was a very big influence in my life, as was my mom, but my dad even more so and I think I got my competitive drive and athletic drive from him. I know that now as I look back, and you learn things as you go through your life about your parents that you might not have known when you were a kid, right?
Mm,
And so, he helped shaped me. He helped, kind of encourage me to be an independent female, get an education, learn all you can. He was an avid reader. And so, it was a tough time to go through, but yeah, it absolutely shaped me. And I'll go back to, our family was very, very open about things. We shared things. We were a unit. We were the family that ate breakfast and dinner together. We communicated, and his mental health was not a surprise. So I can't say that the actual event was, I was shocked by it. And I do feel like I understood it. As weird as that may be to say, I understood why he decided that that was his only out. Um, but I can also tell you, I think a big part of being able to have calm from it was forgiveness. Like, I really think in a world of today where so much happens and mental health is a big part of life, and people go through this by themselves or, with others, my single point of release was forgiveness. And really, your parents are your parents and they mean everything to you. And then when one decides to take their lives, it's like, oh, wow, what do I do now? Like a source of, who I am is gone. And so that forgiveness was really, really important. Now, how that has shaped me afterwards, and that forgiveness is, number one, I feel like I'm able to empathize and sympathize with people who may be struggling, right? Even in my everyday life, whether it's mental health or just problem solving or someone needs time off, I feel like I'm really, really tuned into, like, emotional, what people are going through emotionally, and I can relate. I don't always have to know the ins and outs, but I can relate, and I can give people space to talk about it or not, and just say, okay, you have the time that you need to deal with whatever you're dealing with. And so, I do feel like the it has shaped me as a leader, in terms of really just connecting on a human level.
yeah.
It also shaped me. I think it made me more determined to define what my success was. And the reason I say that is because when I look back at my dad and why he actually committed suicide, he never felt like he had the success that he wanted to have. And so that's why when my daughter, if I connect the dots, when my daughter asked me about, did you ever think you wouldn't be successful? I had to pause and say, no. However, you have to define what success means for you. And I
Yeah.
think, my dad's generation set the bar really high, and he set the bar really high for himself. And there was nothing that any one of us could have done to alleviate that pressure that he put on himself to be successful.
Right.
So I think, as I work through what, a big job is, a big title, running teams, being international, being global, what truly does define success to people. And so I think that's where, I look back on that event and say, okay, it's not about money to me. It's not about, big titles. It's not about, you know, I think things that people think I've made it and I'm successful. It's really, it's now for me, it's about having personal satisfaction and impact in what I do and actually helping others realize, you know, what what it is that makes them successful and how they, propping them up and making sure that they understand, they can achieve no matter what that achievement may be or mean, right?
Mhm.
I think I think it's how it shaped me. And
Yeah.
and I also am very aware of mental health, right?
Yeah.
It's very real. So yeah, I think I hope that kind of answers the
That's a lovely
question.
answer. Do you ever struggle with over empathy, Anne?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And people have said, early on in my career and actually recently, I had someone say to me, I was in tears in a cab ride. I'm in Singapore and I was young. I was a young professional, but I cared so deeply about my people.
Mm.
Um, and she was an amazing mentor, amazing colleague. And she turned to me in the cab and literally said, Anne, I'm going to say this in the nicest way, but don't care so much.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Don't care so much. That's what leadership is. And at the end of the day, she wasn't telling me not to care. She was just
Mm.
telling me to put care where it needed to be the most, right? And
Mm.
also not internalize everyone else's challenges. So the question of, do I empathize too much sometimes? Yes. And then literally just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was having a conversation with one of our HR team. And she said, Anne, there's a difference between being careless and caring. Like, don't be careless, but care less.
Yeah.
So, it's a play on that word. And I said, you're absolutely right. And so oftentimes I will need to step back and say, okay, am I caring too much? And where do I need to pivot and maybe kind of reframe? So
Yeah.
yes, of course.
Because I'm a huge empath, and there's one thing I really have to work on. I one of the reasons I love my job is because I see people getting amazing results, but I want to fix everybody, and I want to give them all the answers. I want to make everybody sleep better
Yeah.
and not feel anxious. And I loved what you said about your dad saying that you came to a point where you realized that there was nothing anyone could have done,
Mm,
because I could imagine an over empath, maybe like you and you
mm.
could easily spend the rest of your life thinking, "Oh my God, I should have been able to do something. There should have been this one thing that I spotted, or I said, or that I did, or that." And to come to a place where you can be at peace and say what you said was, I think that's a real strength, and I can see why you have that and why you need to have that in your job, because empathy can burn you out fast, right?
Oh yeah, because you're taking
Really,
on everyone else's
really
problem,
fast.
as
Yeah,
you say,
especially.
trying to fix things.
Yeah,
And it wasn't. You can't fix death. And so to continue through my life, and I was that close to my father. I knew that he would not want me to sit my whole life
yeah,
trying to figure out what I could have done differently.
yeah,
Because and that was one thing, that was the beauty of the relationship in terms of he imparted what he needed to impart to me to help me go on my path. And like I said, I always come back to, I forgave very quickly. And that's just, I think that's also part of the healing process,
Yeah.
and just being able to move on, and being at peace and calm with the situation, because he would not have wanted me to live my life thinking, what could I have done differently?
No, for sure. Take us through the in as much detail as you like, the things you do when you're up against it, when things are stressing you out, when sleep maybe is affected, when you're spinning 1,000 plates and your inbox is overflowing and there's fires everywhere. And what kind of things you, I mean, you already talked about you being an athlete when you were younger. Is exercise part of your pantheon of good things that you do? To take us through the kind of all the good things
Yeah.
you do to keep on an even keel and to stop.
Yeah, for sure. I'm an avid walker. Whether it's, I know some people don't like a treadmill, but if it's cold and snowy outside here in Switzerland, then, I'm an avid walker and I will walk on. We have a treadmill, and that's why we have it. So I can get on it and just zone out. Right. And I love walking outside. So I like hiking as well, but I am a walker, and it's when I can go on long walks that I can think through things either by myself, or my husband will oftentimes walk with me, and that's our chat time. And it's nice to bounce ideas, off of each other. But I am an avid walker. I also love Pilates. I think it's great for core. It's great for mental. It's great for stretching and just kind of, again, zoning out from those 1,000 plates. From I've got a to-do list that's a mile long. It's just, I think the core at its core, those two things are step away from the work. Like
Yeah.
you can't, just get out of the box for a minute, and oftentimes you will see things in a different light, for sure. But I'm a big promoter of exercise. I'm funny enough now, even at work, and we're close to the airport. If our office is close to the airport, if I need a break, I will just go walk around the airport, right? And walk the floors and see what's going on in the stores, or stop by the bookstore, or those types of things. So I think that's really important. I also, cliche as it may sound, I love a good massage. 90 minutes of just lay on the table and let, someone take the stress out of your muscles, right?
Yeah.
And just try to completely relax. What else do I do? As a child, I was an avid journaler. Like I have oftentimes thought, okay, I need to get back to that practice, because I just really liked, the writing down of what was going on, what I was thinking, clear your mind, and, get it down on paper. And so, I have oftentimes thought, okay, could I go back to journaling? And yes, I could. It hasn't come to the top of my um, to-do list yet, but it's something that I did love as a child a lot. What else do I do? Oh, I am a huge proponent of diet. It is sleep, diet, exercise. And yes, that's, the kind of the triad that everyone may say, but from a diet perspective, and it's not diet. I don't diet. I don't like fad diets, but I have an eating regime that also, includes fasting. And it's adopted by a doctor that's called the human being diet. And it's actually, it was life changing at one point, because I was having, really severe stomach cramps and not feeling well, and fog, and brain fog. But I did a lot of reading on this, and I have just adopted, again, it's not a diet. Diet is, considered a way of eating. We've kind of adapted it in life to mean, oh, a fad diet, I need to lose weight. It didn't have anything to do with losing weight at all.
Mm,
It was
mm.
more just eating healthy and getting the right level of protein, the right level of vegetables, the right level of fruit, limited sugar, and I think it's made a world of difference. So those things, and I can instantly tell, I deal better with pressure when my body is nourished with the right foods.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I will tell you, I'm an avid wine fan. And so sometimes that creeps in, but By and large, I try to keep a really healthy diet. I love food, so don't get me wrong. I absolutely am a big foodie. Like to try new restaurants, but day in and day out, it's super important to me to have a healthy diet.
Are you a good sleeper?
Um, some days, actually, that's not true. Most days, I'm a good sleeper. If
Mm,
something is really, really taxing and stressing me, then I will wake up in the night for
yeah.
sure.
Do you have
Yeah.
any strategies for when that happens?
Um, yes. So I learned to meditate at a young kind of college age. And there was a very, very simple practice, right? Breathe all the bad in, like fill it up, and then black in and white out. So just breathe all white light out. And so if I do wake up in the middle of the night, I can go right back to that breathing part of the meditation was that breathing practice that just calms, and you're just totally with your breath, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're concentrated on that, not
Mm,
concentrating on the thing that you're trying to solve,
yeah.
which
That
I
ma-
have found in many instances is really good. And it's not even just when I'm sleeping. Sometimes I just have to take a step back from my computer or what I'm doing, take a deep breath, and let it out. And even your watches these days will say, "Oh, it's time to stand up. It's time to take a deep breath," which is a nice
mm,
reminder. But I believe that kind of calm breathing is super helpful. And so at night, in particularly if I wake up at night, it's something that I do.
yeah, lovely. What would you say is the highest stakes situation you've been in? Maybe you've answered this already, but what's the
Mm.
highest stakes situation you've been in, and what was the one thing maybe that got you through it?
I don't know if it's the highest in my life. I mean, my dad was probably a really
Yeah.
challenging one. However, there was a probably a more recent one. Actually, what's today? A year ago tomorrow. Um, my daughter had a ski accident
Oh,
she was in her last day of ski school for the season. And my son called me and said, "Mommy," and I was in my room. The kids were having a ski lesson. "Mommy, I think there's been a ski accident. Sarah George has been in a ski accident." And I said, "What do you mean a ski accident? Well, where is she?" "Well, I don't know, but she hasn't come down the mountain with our instructor." And so, long story short, yes, there had been a ski accident. They couldn't tell me what was wrong. She's on top of the mountain, I'm on the bottom. And I didn't know if she was conscious. I didn't know if she was, you know, I didn't know what state she was in. Then the ski instructor calls and says, "We're going to have to helicopter her off the side of the mountain."
wow.
And I still, at that time, keeping in mind that the language barrier was a challenge, he spoke English, but not great.
Yeah.
I didn't speak any German at the time. And so I, I was at that point, you see your whole life flash before you. And my experience with helivac in the United States was it's head, neck, spine, or you're dead if somebody's being helivaced off the side of a mountain. So, um, yeah, I had to really, really go inside, like deep inside, and say, "Okay, don't panic.
Yeah.
Just don't panic. You know, don't think the worst. Clearly, there's a problem, and we've got to get her off the side of the mountain into the children's hospital." But the 20 minutes between the time that I found out about the accident and I was in the helicopter with her, and I could see her, smiling face. It was wow. Like you have to, at that point in time, you have to dig deep
Yeah.
because all you're thinking is she'll never walk again. Am I going to have to put ramps in my house so that
Yeah.
then she can, move
Yeah.
around?
Yeah. Yeah.
All those things. Meanwhile, and of course, my husband at the time was in Dubrovnik with his entire global sales team.
Oh,
So
wow.
It's he doesn't know, I don't know, we're apart, you don't have any, my son is, trying to take care of getting out of the ski resort. And so it's all of these things that just have to kind of come back together. And, I think back to dad and back to, you learn in those times to really just come to center and just, I, as a Christian female, you come to pray a lot and just say, okay, it's out of my hands. I can't control it. And being a real control freak, right? Things in order,
Mm,
closet in order, desk in order, life in order. It's just not then. And then
yeah.
you really have to figure out, or just come right back to, it's out of my hands. And you have to let go, and just be calm. And it is what it is.
And what had happened to her?
Oh, she broke her leg and she couldn't move
Right.
it,
Okay.
but snapped her tibia right in half.
Oh,
And and the ski instructor was afraid to move her.
right.
And so that was just how and in Switzerland, you have to understand, there's Riga, there's this beautiful helicopter, service that I was not aware of, quickly am now, but they will come get you, right? And
Right.
this is normal. It seems to be normal practice during the ski season. And so, yeah, but being new to it all, and I've skied, but my daughter had never skied. And so, yeah, she broke her leg right in half. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, that whole, because the way you told the story, I'm sure there was huge relief in some ways from you that, oh, it's just a broken leg. Like when you just said to me, she broke a leg, I was thinking, oh, thank God, that's all it was. That's a
yeah.
nasty injury. Obviously, it's a very nasty injury. It takes a long time to get over and stuff.
Oh,
But
never been happier. Like I
right.
was like, okay, this is
Yeah, we
easy
got
fix,
this. Yeah.
easy fix. Yes. And when you get in, it's interesting because I'd never been in a helicopter before. Um, you're getting in a helicopter. I had no idea what state she was in. I had no idea what was even wrong, right?
Yeah.
Get in, and she's laying in this complete red. She looked like she was in a cocoon, and all I could see was her little face, right? And so I get in, and she starts crying, but she's smiling. I'm okay. Texting my husband, we're okay. She's okay. And then the nurse said, I think she's just broken her leg. We'll
Right.
assess when we get to the hospital. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, you do. And you realize then, okay, that's where you go back to, don't think the worst. There's a problem, but wait and see what it is. Don't
Yeah.
human mind is like, you go to the worst case scenario, and don't do that. So that's where you just, again, inner calm and inner strength, and just wait, just wait.
And this is why presence is such an amazing superpower, isn't it? Whether you're in a boardroom, just this problem. Okay, we've got 15 things to do, and yeah, we've got 100 fires to put out. But can I just be with this one? Or whether you're at the top of a mountain and you don't quite know what's happening with your daughter yet, and you know they're going to take her away in a helicopter, that the more you can, and of course your mind's going to race. I think everybody's mind would race, and everybody's
Yeah.
going to think, oh my God, this could happen. And say she's done that, and say she's done that. But if you
Yeah.
can have the awareness that sees these thoughts and
Mm.
says, oh, okay, here's the thoughts I'm having. But you know what? Let me just come back to this for now, just this second, not even 2 seconds beyond that, just
Yep.
this.
Yep.
That's very different between being so at the mercy of your thoughts and emotions
Mm.
that you're panicking, and whether that's then
Right.
worse for your daughter, or whether you then make the wrong decision in the boardroom. Like this stuff just applies universally, doesn't it?
Everywhere. Everywhere. I
And it's
mean, if you
arguably
can,
more important the more senior you go.
yeah, absolutely, because you need to be able to right the ship, and
Yeah.
or steady your team. And
Yeah.
you just brought up a beautiful point. I had to get in that helicopter in a certain way so that my daughter knew, I'm okay. My
Yeah.
mom's here. We're all going to be fine. We're just going to have a lovely helicopter ride, which was fantastic. But it's the same thing with my teams, with my
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
how you show up and how you bring that peace of mind to that. You can calm a lot of people that way, and a lot of
Mm.
situations, right? It's not the end of the world. You're going to be able to get through it together. But You're absolutely right. Just being able to sit with that one problem or one challenge or one thing you need to solve, it can help bring peace to a lot of people and a calmness to a team for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. The best way I heard somebody describe it is a guy, Andy Puddicombe, who's the guy behind Headspace. And he said, when you can learn to see your thoughts and you become the watcher, the witness, the observer of those, and you
Mm.
can witness the emotion. He said, it's like the difference between being out in a storm and getting very, very wet and being in a nice warm house and watching the storm happen. The storm
Mm.
still happens. The leg
Mm.
break still happens on the side of the mountain. The
Yep.
disaster still happens. The big issue in the boardroom still happens. But
Mm.
where are you? Are you in the midst of that storm, or are you in the house watching that storm? And I
Right.
think this is the kind of thing that we can cultivate. This is the kind of thing that leaders, maybe they have it arguably. Well, let me ask you that as the next question. Do you think people
Mm.
like you, do you think you kind of have that? Because there must be a certain amount of nature and nurture, right?
Mm.
I teach people the art of being more present, and whether that's in an executive boardroom or whether you just join the company, um, we'll tailor the curriculum in different ways, but essentially we're teaching fundamental skills here.
Mm.
So that's the kind of nurture side of it.
Mm.
Well, what do you think about how people are kind of born? We know the whole neuroplasticity thing, right? Which is
Mm.
anybody that's watching this that doesn't know. So neuroplasticity says, and this was only a relatively recent discovery,
Mm.
um, that my favorite real quick example to describe this, they nothing to do with meditation, nothing to do with mindfulness. They studied a whole bunch of taxi drivers in London. These are the men and women who have got the license to drive a proper London Hackney carriage.
Mm.
They have to pass a test called the knowledge,
Yeah.
which is basically you pretty much got to memorize the map of London in your head. You got to know all the
Right.
street names. You got to know where things are relative. So if I get in a cab on Park Lane and say take me to the nearest theatre, you got to know where that is. Where's the nearest hospital? You know where that is. So the
Yeah.
incredible feat of memory. The men and women that drive these black cabs, whatever color they are now, um,
Mm.
they've developed a huge that part of their brain is working brilliantly. And they compared the brains of the men and women driving the taxis that had done the knowledge to the men and women's brains driving the buses that are just doing the same routes, right?
Mm.
Nobody gets in a
Mm.
bus and says, take me here. You either go in that route, or you don't get on the bus, right? And what they found was the hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with kind of spatial mapping,
Mm.
literally grew and was way more kind of developed and online and stronger in the men and women that drove the taxis, right? Now
Yeah.
this led us to the, and I'm kind of dumbing very scientific stuff down to kind of kindergarten, but essentially how we live our lives and what we do, and we're always practicing something, right? We are what we practice, and we're always practicing something, whether it's getting stressed about things or inviting a bit of calm into our day.
Right.
This has a direct effect on our brain, right? In the same way that if I go and lift a heavy weight, this muscle gets bigger in the gym, and that's exciting for me as somebody who's probably by nature a glass half empty person who's I've got a very strong inner critic,
Mm.
quite an
Mm.
anxious person. This was like water in a drought for me, because this is giving me the hope that I can change this at least to a certain level, right?
Mm.
So we've
Yeah.
got this whole nurture side of things, and we know we can do it, and neuroplasticity and everything else feeds into this.
Yeah.
But as you, what about your nature? Do you think you were born pretty much uh, someone that could handle stress? If that doesn't sound like a ridiculous question.
Mm. No, it's not a ridiculous question. And the answer is I don't know.
Yeah,
And the reason I say I don't know is because like I said, I have a tale of two halves. And my dad, high intense stress, go, go, go,
yeah,
big overachiever, big reader, kind of an introvert living in an extrovert's world, high sales, all those things. On the other hand, I had a mother that was a teacher and also, a teacher of teachers. And always, always glass half full, always. Like
right,
her level of, you know, it's going to be okay, high level of faith. Also, again, one day at a time,
yeah,
don't get stressed, just take it, step one, step two, one foot in front of the other. So I had the balance. So I probably, in my nature, in the DNA, I had the stress and the high intensity, but I also had, the calm kind
yeah,
of I don't know, calm and methodical and kind of, I don't know, supportive, caring mother.
Yeah.
Not that my dad wasn't supportive and caring, but I had both of those. And however, I do, so in nature, I think that's part of it. I also think nurture, again, I think nurture plays a big piece as well.
Yeah.
Because, the experiences that I would have been given, the things that I, put myself out there to do, you learn from these things.
Mm.
But I do think human beings can be trained no matter what.
Yeah.
We can learn to adapt and have these things. But there's got to be something in the nature and in your DNA as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We're going to finish with some quick fire questions. If that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Just some kind of funky, fun ones.
Fun.
Are you a morning or an evening person?
Morning.
I knew you were going to say that. Emails or phone calls?
Ooh, both. I'm okay with both.
Okay. Favorite food?
Oh, Indian food. I love Indian food.
What's Indian food like in Switzerland? Is it good?
Oh, no, there's no Indian food here. I do when you ask me
Really?
my favorite food.
But there's no
No,
good Indian restaurants near you. Really?
not no, not that I've looked at. And
Oh,
Indian food, I love Indian food. It doesn't like me, but when I
right.
was working a lot in India, I always loved to go there, and the food is just spectacular.
Oh, you're talking about authentic Indian food in India
Yes,
rather than
yes,
what
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Guilty pleasure, Anne.
Wine.
What's your favorite?
Oh, um, uh, you know,
Let's just go red or white or rosé. Keep it easy.
oh, we'll go red. There's nothing better than like a good French red. I love
Mm.
it.
Mm. Last question. If you can invite
Oh,
anyone over for dinner, alive or dead, you can have more than one person if you want. Who would you
mm,
have?
wow.
Dinner party
Um,
at Anne's. Who's coming?
my dad's definitely coming because
Yeah.
he would come back for sure. For sure. I would love I would love to have Margaret Thatcher. I think she's amazing. Um, Elton John. I think he's had first one of my favorite artists, and I think he's amazing. Um, who else? I'll do a party. I'll do a party of six because that's what we normally do.
Okay.
So Dad, Margaret Thatcher, Elton John. Um, wow, I should have thought through this. George Washington. I've always had a big kind of curiosity around George Washington in terms of leading, the troops and being the first U.S. president, which I
Yeah.
think would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, five would be this is kind of a left field one as well, but I think Lady Gaga is a phenomenal just artist and yeah, pretty amazing.
Mm.
And then the sixth one, Condoleezza Rice. As an academic and I think as a politician, I admire her courage and I think, just amazing.
Wow.
I think that I could probably keep going, but
That's an
yeah.
impressive. That's a great table, though, isn't it? You'd have some amazing conversations that night.
Yeah, between politics and music and academics and
I
yeah,
think you
would be
might be
good.
up to the wee small hours chatting to her, man.
Might be with my big glass of French red.
Yeah. Bring out another bottle. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
And it's
Very
been
good.
a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Such a
much for
great
joining me.
way.
I
Great
really
way to
appreciate
spend
it.
an afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.